Well, hello everybody to the February online program for the alumni of the Sunshine Coast Health Center here in Powell River, British Columbia. And it's February. This month we'll talk about how to live comfortably in the gray areas of life. And this is a topic that drives all people in early recovery crazy. And it drives them crazy because all people in early recovery are, as I affectionately say, control freaks. And by the way, don't feel badly about this. This makes perfect sense. I mean, if you weren't a control freak, then you'd probably be like the worst drug addict in the history of the universe. It's sort of a necessity that when you're doing something that everybody is telling you not to do and that's costing a fortune, you pretty much have to try to take control over people, places, and things. That's why that's where all that lying comes from and all the manipulation and stuff like that. Right? And you have to do it because if you didn't do it, you'd never be able to get the drugs, and then of course you wouldn't get high. So it's fairly annoying. That's why people take jobs, for example, in, I don't know, construction industry. Sorry if you're in the construction industry, but it's well known. Or you're in some kind of job I'm thinking of, like that allows you to be alone a lot. I don't know, maybe somebody working out in the bush, in a job where, for example, you get to control what's going on. So say you're the supervisor or the foreman of something, so you can dictate where you are and where you're not going to be at a certain time and date. Or something along the lines of maybe you sell drugs because steady supply. So we do these things in order to get the substance. And as I said, it makes perfect sense. And in fact, every addict I've ever met is a control freak because, frankly, you have to be. But one of the things about recovery is to reverse that. Somehow you have to learn to live comfortably in this gray area of life, in a world where you don't get to control things and you don't feel that you have to control them. That's what happy people do, by the way. I mean, they've come to terms with the fact that they just don't control stuff in life. Lots of things happen in life that we have no control over. I have no control over my boss. I have no control over my family. They're all adults. They're going to do whatever they want to do. I have no control over some of the big stuff, like the fact I'm going to die. Even though I may not want to die, I know it's coming. It is just part of what it means to be alive. The poor people in Haiti, right? No control over earthquakes. They could have been sitting in some building somewhere, right? And the earthquake hits and the roof falls on their head. All sorts of things that we don't get to control in life. And the idea is, how do you live comfortably in that kind of a world? Dr. Paul Wong, my mentor that I've talked about before, he told me years ago that as a therapist, one of my jobs was to help clients learn to live comfortably in the ambiguity of life. That's what he said. And times where there are no immediate answers, or maybe there's no answer. And times where you can't see how things are going to work out in the end. You got this problem and you can't see how it's going to get resolved. And that my job as a therapist was to help clients work through this stuff so that they were no longer being so heavily affected by this. But people in early recovery have a really tough time. I don't know how many times I've heard this one. I don't care which way it gets settled. I just want to settle. And regardless if it's for me or against me, it doesn't matter. I can deal with it. I must have heard that 1,000 times from clients. And that's pretty typical, right? Because to be in the gray area, to be in a place where things are not settled, where there is no resolution, this is drives people crazy, right? So this month, we'll talk about how to learn to live comfortably in the ambiguity of life or in the gray area of life. And we'll give you some techniques for that. But the first thing we got to do is figure out, where does this feeling that I have to control everything come from? And basically, it's fear. Now, it's pretty normal for all human beings to feel that they're in control. I mean, that's not a debatable issue. That's one of the key things to feeling good about life. Happy people have figured that out, but they figured it out knowing that they don't get to control everything. Unhappy people, people in early recovery, for example, haven't figured that out yet. Their only tactic that they can dream up is, well, I got to get this person to do this, and I got to get that person to do that, and I got to arrange things. So I'm the director, right? It even says that in the big book. In fact, the big book even makes a big point about this. Here's an example. This is right from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It even says here, each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. That's a pretty good description. Not very technical, but a good description of what most people in early recovery are going through. Yeah, as long as everybody would do everything that I want them to do, then I'll be fine. So if my family would quit nagging me, I'll feel a lot better. So I can tell them that. Well, dear, I went to Sunshine Coast, right, and I found out that when you nag me, that's bad for my recovery. So, you better get yourself to a therapist or go join Al-Anon or something, right? Again, this need to control other people. Trying to get, my parents won't give me money for my rent. Well, they've always given me money. Well, what's wrong now, right? And so I'm going to maybe guilt my parents out and see if that'll work, because that's a pretty good tactic I've worked on over the years, right? All of these things, these tactics we use to try to control people around us, to try to control people, places, and things, right? And it all comes from basically fear. If we blow the smoke off it, the bottom line, the foundation, is fear. This is really easy to understand with active addiction. For example, if I don't get some money from my parents, I'm not going to have the means to get the drugs, because, the dealer's going to want the money. And if I don't have the drugs, that means I don't get high. And if that happens, then I will suffer. And the thought of that suffering is unacceptable. So I got to do something. So I'm afraid of that suffering. That's where the fear comes from in this example. So maybe I'll go to Mom and say, Mom, my truck, I blew the rear differential. Oh, it's going to cost like $1,000. I have no money. Can you front me a few hundred? So it's a complete lie and a manipulation. But you need the money in order to get the drugs, okay? Because the thought of the drug, not having the drug, is unacceptable, right? And so what you're basically saying is, I'm afraid of that. So fear is the underlying cause. And in early recovery, if you're not getting the drugs, you still have this fear. What if I'm afraid of being alone? I've had this experience of loneliness, and it's unacceptable. So, for example, I might have two girlfriends, right? Girlfriend A and girlfriend B. Therefore, if I lose girlfriend A, I still won't be alone because I got the backup. Right? So that's another example, right? So I'm going to manipulate people. I'm going to use them. So I've got it. Or, for example, maybe my girlfriend, I notice when she gets choked at me, she just kicks me out of the house and doesn't talk to me. And so then I'm alone. Oh, geez, that's not good, right? So I'm going to have to watch what I say around her. I'm going to have to be very, very careful with my words so that I will make her feel a certain way and she won't get angry and kick me out of the house, right? So, and that's really a form of manipulation, right? Yeah, because the alternative is just unacceptable. The alternative means that I will suffer, and this is no good. Right? So fear is the basic reason why addicts feel this need to control. A fear of being hurt emotionally is what it boils down to. Anyway, now that we know that, next week and for the next 3 weeks, we'll start talking about some techniques that you can use to learn to live comfortably in the gray area of life, in the ambiguity of life, in a world where there's no immediate fix, no immediate resolution, where maybe you can't even see the end, can't see the outcome. Okay? So at any rate, we'll see you next week.